Hey everybody, my name's Ed. Okay, so we're going to do another random comic walkthrough. This one is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit more of a deep dive because I think there's some interesting stuff about it. But it's going to be Iron Man number 27 from 1970. And here we are introduced to Firebrand, the most controversial villain in the history of comic mags. Okay, alrighty. And let's see here. Like I said, covers Marie Severin and Joe Sennett. And I think the character box, I think that's Jack Kirby there. But okay, and it was written by Archie Goodwin, pencils by Don Heck, and inks by John Craig. Johnny Craig. Okay, so the story takes place in a Midwestern city called Bay City, and Iron Man has teamed up with a local Midwestern businessman to open a community center in the inner city, and he wants to talk his black friend into running the center. Meanwhile, a group of black radicals have they're protesting the center due to their lack of community input. And Firebrand shows up trying to incite the protesters to violence. Iron Man is there to fight Firebrand. The police show up, and a riot is about to break out. Meanwhile, the businessman might have some shady business dealings going on, and the black friend is forced to take a stand regarding conflicts and the future of the neighborhood and whatnot. Okay, so a little bit of background here or a context. So basically, the comic was published in 1970. So the last couple of years, America had been pretty turbulent as far as race relations and urban unrest. So there were riots in Detroit and Newark in 1967. There were conflicts in 1968 in Chicago, D.C., and Baltimore. You had the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Bobby Kennedy. The Vietnam War was still going on, but the mainstream public was slowly starting to turn against it. And Richard Nixon had just been elected president, and he ran on a platform of restoring, law and order. Okay, now the other thing we need to know is the civil rights movements of the 50s and 60s, mostly characterized as peaceful protests, marches, and sit-ins. And these guys were more integrationist. But then you also had the more quote unquote militant black power, black nationalist part of that. That's from the 60s and 70s. And that side of the movement was really more focused on like Afrocentric pride and economic empowerment in black neighborhoods. So this was the real life environment that the comic was released in. Okay, so also just to talk about the creators a little bit, you've got Archie Goodwin. He had a long career in comics as both a writer and a highly respected editor, starting in the 60s, early 60s, and lasting through the 90s until he died in 98, I guess. He done work for Warren Publishing, DC, Marvel, and others. Don Heck, similarly a long career in comics starting around 1949, lasting until about 1990, working for Harvey, Marvel, DC Comics. He died around 1995. He had an interesting art style that we'll probably get into a little bit later. So the story is actually a little bit more complex and nuanced than I thought it would be. In fact, it's better than a couple other superhero stories that came out at the same time that tackle the same subject matter. So the radicals here are portrayed as being confrontational, but they're not blindly violent. The female activist gives a substantial reason why the black community might be skeptical of the community center. In preferring to have loans or investments that the community control themselves rather than outright, charity. Firebrand is ambiguously the bad guy. But he, even though they don't give him an origin, they do give him a motivation that it kind of makes sense, a logical, yeah, I guess that's what you want to say. They give him motivation that sort of makes sense rather than him just showing up being evil for the sake of evilness. And there is and there's an interesting twist on how corruption and supposed philanthropy can sometimes intersect. All right, so on that note, getting back to Don Heck, as you can kind of see here, his art is solid, but what's interesting is that he's coming from a different school of art. Originally, he's kind of more influenced by like Milton Caniff and newspaper strips and stuff like that. And when he got involved with Marvel, they had him do more, Jack Kirby style art, and he kind of had to force his style into that. So, so basically, when people are kind of standing around and talking, and stuff like that, it starts perfectly fine. But when he does the kind of more bombastic, over the top action, that's when it sometimes looks just a little bit stiff. So to wrap it up, it's a pretty intriguing comic. It reflects on what was going on at the time. And it seems to take, like I said, a more complex than usual look at a kind of complex issue. Decently paced story. There's some plot threads and stuff dangling from previous issues, and they leave a couple of things open, but you can read it as it works as a one and done story. Okay, so like I said, it's a provocative story, in the right way. Okay, so then that's pretty much it. I've got to thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And you guys have a great day. All right, let's see here.